Hi folks, Six Slices here. Now, Rick, who is Warthogg on YouTube, Warthogg with 2 Gs, was showing some little knives the other day, and they were little Kershaw knives made in Japan. I think back in the day, in a way, Japan was like China is now. It's where you went to get your knives made cheap. Now it's where you buy really expensive knives by Moki and Rockstead and people like that. But they still make pattern knives, particularly Moki make a lot of knives for other people, and I'm very keen on those, and I sort of collect them. So I've picked up a few sort of little baby Spyderco ladybugs, a couple of the dragonflies. For years I carried this tiny little lockback. I've picked up others. As a Falkniven one. Now there's a Gerber one. I think actually this one was actually made in America, but it was Gerber that showed this process for the one-piece molded handles, for which were taken up by Spyderco and later by Falkniven, make the same sort of things. So I'm quite keen on these little knives, and I've got, as I say, I've got quite a few of them. That's just some of them there. As I say, this one I carried for years and years and years, this little silver tern. I think these were the knives on which Sal Glesser made his first Spydercos. I don't think it's very clear from this, but he effectively added a hole by welding a nut onto the back of one of these knives, and then ground it so that it was the same thickness as the blade, and it gave him the initial Spidey hole, and that was what he kind of based it on. But let's not worry about that just now. So anyway, Rick showed a couple of these, and I put a little comment at the bottom of his thing, as I always do, saying how much I like these little knives, and he said he was going to send me this one, the mother of pearl one, this little Kershaw knife. And I said, well, that's very kind of you, but you can't do that unless I send you something in return. So I had a buck Barlow knife, and I don't really collect American knives, but it's one of those ones I picked up cheap when I was doing a purchase off the Apostle P knife sale, and I added it in, and I think it was about 30 quid, and I added a little case in as well. It was the same as $30 with a case. It was even less, I think. So I just added those to the basket, but I can't remember what I was actually buying, but I'm sure I just added those two in. And so I thought, well, I'll send you one of them. So I said, I'll send you one of those. Well, apparently, even though it's a yellow Delrin buck Barlow knife, apparently they're actually quite valuable. So Rick took it upon himself to send me not just one of these, 2 of these, and not just 2 of these, but also these other 2 knives as well. And I'm quite flabbergasted by that, because that's far more than was necessary. I kind of know how he feels if somebody sends me something that's sort of I perceive it as being worth more than what I've sent them, then I do feel a bit like I want to top things up. But this was unnecessary. He went over the top here. But I'm really grateful, because I really like these little knives. I know that these little Kershaws are, they're in many ways, they're no different to a little Chinese-made Kershaw that I was given the other day. But I like these. There's just something about them that just reminds me of the little lockback that I carried for years and years and years. I mean, that was all I carried. That was what I needed. Now these are actually very slightly smaller, and these do have the advantage that these are in fact slip joints. So these are ones that if I wanted to carry one, I could, without fear that I'm going to be arrested for having a weapon of mass destruction in my pocket. These are small little slip joints. This one is mother of pearl. It's real mother of pearl, and it's on both sides, which I think is, it's very, very nice. I'm told these are not very valuable. The price doesn't really matter. I don't see that matters at all. I just think they're just really cool. And, to have a friend in America that will just send me these things is very special. So I'm very pleased. It just says on there, 5600 Japan. I don't know what the 5600 means, probably a pattern number. Oh, one thing I do quite like, you've got this sort of bottle opener screwdriver, and on the other side it has a little nail file. So I think that's, other than scissors, that's really all the things you might just need in your pocket. The stamp there, by the way, says Kershaw rather, and Kai, K-A-I, which, if I was clever, I probably could have looked up to see what that means, because it's presumably a Japanese word that means something. But I didn't, so there we are. And then this little one here, which a little bit of wear on that, but it's tortoiseshell, but it's obviously not really tortoiseshell. It's just it's either a little thin sliver of acrylic, or it's just a stick-on thing. This one's got a little sort of rectangular shield on it on the one side, and then the other side it's just the tortoiseshell. Every time I see tortoiseshell, I always think of when I was a small child. I wore glasses from when I was 4 years old, and I always had these what we call NHS or National Health Service glasses, which were a sort of thing sort of Joe 90 used to wear or something like that. But the ones you had a choice, they were either black plastic or they were tortoiseshell plastic, and I always had the tortoiseshell ones. I don't know how many pairs I had, but they lasted me about 3 months before I smashed them at school or dropped them or whatever, because they had glass lenses, of course, in those days. So you dropped them, they just shattered everywhere. And as a small child, you drop them all the time. So half the time they had little bits of sticky plaster holding the corners together, and the rest of the time they'd have cracks in the lenses. But I got through an awful lot of them. That's got the same number on it in Japan, so it may be a pattern number for the shape. And again, it has Kershaw and Kai on that side. I just think these are just such lovely little knives. I like them. It's just untrue how much I like them, and how grateful I am to have received them. Now, I'll just put those to a side for a minute, and let's have a look at these other two that he sent me. Now, these are two Sheffield knives. Now, I collect certain knives, and the ones I collect are Sheffield knives and Japanese knives. I collect some European knives, and then I've got a small collection of just special pieces. So that there's a couple of Chris Reeves in there and a couple of Bedfords and stuff like that. But the majority of my collection, at least a third, if not half, of the knives that I own are Sheffield knives. And these two, although they've come to me from America, are Sheffield knives. If I open the main blade on this one, you'll be able to see that. Now this has on there, see that on the blade? IXL. IXL is, and effectively it's a trademark, but it means, I do better than anybody else. And it's the trademark of George Wolstenholme, who was a Sheffield knife maker. Now, the name Wolstenholme still exists, but it belongs to the Egerton Group, and they produce some nice-ish knives, but they're such a long-established Sheffield maker, and you can see on the tang stamp there it says it's got the IXL again, and it's got George Wolstenholme, Sheffield, England underneath that. I think, or on this side, yes, this is the old oil the joints. Now, this is a funny thing. That phrase, oil the joints, is always plural. Even if you've only a single bladed knife, it always says oil the joints, never oil the joint. That's why when I reviewed the Jack Wolf knife, I questioned whether the term oil the joint was a drug reference, and Ben Belkin said absolutely not, I don't make drug references. But yeah, okay, I was slightly unconvinced by that, but nonetheless, that's what you say, that's what it is. And again, it's just as on the tang here, again it says IXL George Wolstenholme, Sheffield, England. Oops, caught the knife on the cable there. So that's one. And funnily enough, I have already another little George Wolstenholme. See another IXL in mother of pearl. And this here is one of my favourite little knives. I don't think it's desperately old. I have the original box for it, which, because it's in such good condition, I suspect means it wasn't desperately old. This one's slightly smaller than the one that Rick has sent me. Just get these in frame. I don't want to put them that way up. So the Rick's one is just slightly bigger. But I just love these, and mother of pearl is without a doubt my favourite handle material. You know, I like other things. I love desert ironwood, and I love ram's horn and various other things, but mother of pearl, that's where it's at. So I'm really, really pleased with that, Rick. It's just a beautiful knife. Now, the other one is in some ways a little bit more plain, but it is again a George Wolstenholme. Now this one doesn't have the IXL on the blade like the other one has, but it does have the IXL George Wolstenholme. And I just think under the, you can't quite see it, but under the handle there, it's got the Sheffield, England bit as well. And again, this is a lovely little knife. Now, I don't know how old it is. The material, so just before I go into the material, just show you the other tang stamps, just the same. They're just, again, IXL. So IXL is one of the oldest trademarks, and it is good. It tells you that it's George Wolstenholme at a glance. Now this one is marked stainless steel on the other blade, on here. So, funnily enough, Rick raised that question the other day. When did stainless steel on there? When did stainless steel come to knives? Does that make it very modern? And I think the answer to that is that stainless steel was invented, apparently, the general sort of provenance is given as 1913 in Sheffield. It wasn't used in pocket cutlery until well into the 20s, I think. Of course, 1913, we were just on the eve of the First World War. So it became a common thing to use by the 30s. But I think it was well into the 20s before it was really taken up. So that would suggest that this knife is at least 1930s onwards. The cover material also, though, adds to the question of age. It looks very much like real ivory, in that it's got the sort of veins in it that you would expect to see in ivory. but I don't think it actually is. I think this is a later synthetic material, partly because of the discoloration there. I think it's an imitation ivory, but I don't know. And I mean, in some ways, I'm always puzzled by things. Why would you want to look like ivory? Why would you? I mean, ivory is one of those questionable things, because you have to kill elephants to get ivory, and you don't get much else from an elephant. It's not as though they're, you know, farmed and you know, bred for the pot or anything like that. So it's always slightly difficult. But if you're not going to use ivory because it's not a good thing, why would you want to look like somebody that uses ivory? I don't know. I find that just an odd question. So the only other little Winston equal end pen knife that I have is this one here, which I always have trouble opening because it doesn't have the little easy open dent like that one has. So you've really got to get in there with your thumbnail and catch the edge of that blade, which I'm failing to do here. Try that. Oh, there she goes. This one has a very long main blade for a little equal end pen knife. But again, you got the little IXL George Winston, and again, oil the joints. Again, there's a 2-blade knife, so you could argue, well, yes, it's a 2-blade knife, and that's why it says oil the joints. But and again, on the little blade there. I do think it's quite nice that they went to such a lot of bother, even on the tiniest little knives like this, to make sure that they had a good clear stamp. It's one of the things that used to annoy me with Arthur Wright. Now, since Ashley and his father have taken over, they really have improved things, but they used to turn out knives with unclear stamps all the time, and it just seemed to me such a silly thing to do. So this one, my one's slightly bigger than the one that Rick has sent me, unlike the other ones where it was the other way around. But I do love these little knives. I'd have as many of these as I could ever find. So Rick sent me these two, and I'm very, 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 very pleased with them. There was no need to do it. I think you know, that was much more than was required. But you know, when you have good friends like that, you can't complain about it. It's not something I want to complain about. It's just a really, really nice thing. And thank you very much, Rick. I really, really enjoyed them, all of them. These little Japanese knives are just great, and they go so well into my little collection of Japanese knives. And these fit so well into my main collection. I mean, my main collection, I'd say there's probably about 100, 150. Certainly 100, there might be 150 Sheffield knives, and that's the main part of my collection. You know, 40 or 50 Japanese knives, but that's just a little sub collection that I run. Anyway, that's enough nonsense about this. Thank you again, Rick. That was such a really nice thing to receive. I just hope your parcel turns up eventually, one day. Anyway, it's a bit of a ramble, this one. Gone on a bit. If you like this stuff, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of this, please subscribe, and remember to ring the bell. And if you'd like to leave a comment, I will be happy to answer you. Thank you. Bye.